For if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself, and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. There's a forgetfulness in the culture of Christianity. It's not a culture of Christ-like, it's a culture of sin-like. And it should be a culture of Christ-like. But when you have people in the church saying no one can be perfect, or that nobody's perfect, that sort of thing, it really mixes things up. Because how can you be like Christ except by being perfect? How can you be like Christ except by having the same moral fortitude as him? It is by Christ that we can have that, and without Christ we cannot have that. Without Christ we are sinners, but with Christ, why would we therefore dwell in sin? It doesn't, it's living a double life. It's being double-minded. It's not being like Christ. It's being like the devil. When you choose sin over God, you choose the devil over God. A sinner can go to heaven just by accepting Christ, but it doesn't end at just, oh, I get to go to heaven. There's more to it than that. There's also the part about, okay, now you're saved, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now that you can go to heaven? Are you just going to continue the life of a sinner, or are you going to have heaven on earth? I mean, when Jesus was on the earth, he had heaven on earth. He was multiplying fishes and multiplying bread and stuff like that. We should be doing that. That's not something that someone who is just a sinner is called to do. Because the world is just sinners, but the people of God, they're not supposed to be sinners. They're supposed to be Christ-like. They're supposed to be perfect. It's, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. I mean, you want the height of moral perfection. You want the height of any perfection. That's God the Father. That's God. And yet, in the scripture, in the Bible, Jesus says, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. So for him to say, be like God, and then for the church world to say, or the culture of the church world to say, oh, well, nobody's perfect. No one can be perfect. Oh, well, just that whole nobody's perfect thing, it's a lie. Because we're supposed to be like God. We're supposed to be his children. And when you're a child of somebody, you emulate them. It's not us being higher than God, it's us being like him. It's us respecting that we are his children, and that we're supposed to be like him. That we're supposed to be like our older brother Jesus. We're not supposed to be like Lucifer. We're not supposed to be like that. We're not supposed to be evil. We're supposed to be good. And sin is evil. So to think, oh, well, you can just live a life of sin and you're not. No, when you live a life of sin, you're living a life that is habitually evil. That doesn't mean you can't go to heaven. You can still go to heaven even with a life like that. But it doesn't make things easier. If you'd live like Jesus, you'd get a whole lot more persecution for it, but you'd also be a whole lot more blessed. You live like Jesus and your wealth is multiplied. You live like Jesus and your seed is multiplied. Your longevity of life is multiplied when you live like Jesus. When you are as God intends you to be, you have a fulfilling life instead of the life of a sinner. To glorify the life of a sinner is the spirit of error. There's no sense in it. There's no spiritually, you're being dead. The life of a sinner is spiritually dead. That's why he came to call not the righteous, but the sinners. When you are the righteous, you call the sinners. You don't live like them. You live like Christ. Don't be like the world. Be like God. And the way to figure that out, read the Word and take it to your heart.